by the way, I looked into the Chinese mayor a little bit, the Chinese mayor saga, and it is hilarious because it once again proves exactly what I was talking about with respect to like Israel gets to do anything it wants and no one else can touch it. Okay, like Israel is a unique country. This Chinese mayor was just this Chinese mayor in Arcadia, Chinese American mayor in Arcadia was forced to register as a foreign agent because she was writing articles that were pro-China. Yeah, the California mayor from China, the Arcadia mayor. But we'll get into it a little bit further. We'll dive into it a little bit further. There's more information, obviously. Basically something that virtually every pro-Israel politician has done a millionfold, okay? But of course, it's a little different.
Post attacked his perceived political enemies, including Hillary Clinton and James Comey, George.
And of course, in the past, when the president has posted these things, the Justice Department has followed up with actions. Rachel Scott, thanks very much.
All right, now to the war with Iran, which seems locked in a stalemate. So President Trump says the weeks-old ceasefire is, quote, on life support. He heads to China today. With gas prices topping $4.50 a gallon, the president told Nancy Cordes he's in favor of suspending the national gas tax. Nancy's at the White House. Nancy, good morning.
Kelly, good morning to you. When we spoke by phone, President Trump told me he thinks suspending the federal gas tax is a great idea. And Republican lawmakers immediately took him up on it after that, introducing bills in the House and Senate with a vote to come as early as next week. This move does have bipartisan support, but there are trade-offs.
With oil prices on the rise again as negotiations falter, President Trump is ready to tap the brakes on the gas tax. In a phone interview, Trump told me, quote, "We're going to take off the gas tax for a period of time. And when gas goes down, we'll let it phase back in."
I think the president is 100% right.
Within hours, Missouri Republican Josh Hawley introduced a Senate bill that would pause the 18-cent per gallon federal gas tax for 3 months, with the option to extend the pause another 3 months. Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly introduced a similar bill a couple months ago.
People are having a hard time driving to work because they can't afford gas.
We asked drivers if they think a gas tax holiday does enough.
The more it decreases, the better.
If gas is $4.45 a gallon and you knock off 18 cents, that's less than 5%. So the answer is no.
The gas tax is used to fund road repairs and construction. When former President Joe Biden pitched his own 3-month pause on the tax post-COVID, the conservative Heritage Foundation called the move a gimmick that would blow a multi-billion-dollar hole in the Federal Highway Trust Fund. Even now, the top Republican in the Senate, John Thune, says the best way to meaningfully bring down gas prices is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But Trump rejected Iran's latest offer this weekend. He told me it was a, quote, very stupid proposal, badly written, badly delivered.
After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it.
President Trump departs today for China, where he's going to sit down with President Xi Jinping. Now, China is Iran's #1 oil customer, but gas prices in China are only up about 20% since the war started, compared to 50% here, because the government there controls the price. Kelly.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much for that.
Are you aware of reports that Pakistan are allowing their bases to be used to park Iranian aircraft?
Yeah, that's right. We should actually have smoke for Pakistan as well, which is really funny because then now you've opened up another thing that Donald Trump has to discuss with Xi Jinping. Very funny. It's now considered treason if you say Iran is doing well. When the fake news says that Iranian enemy is doing well militarily against us, it's virtual treason in that it is such a false and even preposterous statement. They are aiding and abetting the enemy. All it does is give Iran false hope that when none should exist. These American cowards that are rooting against our country. Iran had 159 ships in their navy. Every single ship is now resting at the bottom of the sea. They have no navy. Their air force is gone. All technology is gone. Their leaders are no longer with us, and the country is an economic disaster. Only losers, ingrates, and fools are able to make a case against America, President Donald J. Trump. Many Pakistanis are saying Pakistan or America will target Pakistan next. Yeah, welcome to being the table, bitch. Okay. To the Pakistanis, I say welcome. Welcome. As a Turkish American, let me welcome you to being the table. Okay. Pakistan's in Zindabad. But also, Pakistan is the table. And when you are the table, Israel wants to blow up the table. Okay. Luckily, you have nukes, which might be better for you in the long run than having American nukes in American NATO bases. Let's be real. My life for Pakistan. Pakistan is the table, but Turkey is the rug. Devastating. Devastating, but true. Now Israel hates both, though. Yeah. Here's Lindsey Graham shitting on Pakistan.
General King.
Sir, I've seen one report on that.
Well, is it accurate?
Sir, I think based on the variety of classification matters.
Let me just say, do you agree if it is accurate, that is sort of inconsistent with it being a peace mediator?
Sir, I wouldn't want to comment on that based on the ongoing negotiations and Pakistan's role.
Secretary Hexton, if the mediator is allowing reconnaissance aircraft of Iran to be parked in Pakistani air bases, do you think that's consistent with being a fair mediator?
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of these negotiations.
Yeah. Peace, like, dude, shut the up, dude. Come on. There's literally ceasefire talks happening, dude. My boss is in China right now, bro. You're to bag up. Pakistan is basically China's own Israel. Okay, what the are we talking about here, dude? Come on.
I do. I want to get in the middle of these negotiations. I don't trust Pakistan as far as I can throw them. If they actually do have Iranian aircraft parked in Pakistan bases to protect Iranian military assets, that tells me we should be looking maybe for somebody else to mediate. No wonder this damn thing is going nowhere. So, I appreciate all you've done. I'm very supportive of it. But when it comes to Pakistan and China, enough already. Thank you.
Is she about to dog walk Trump? Yes. There is literally no. This is something I'm very confident about.
Iran may also be putting.
Given the amount of leverage that she has and the amount of spectacular that Trump has committed, leading up to this Beijing summit. I mean, the very fact that he actually had to push the summit back is indicative of who holds the cards here, too. All of that combined leads me to believe that this summit is going to be very favorable to China's goals, China's interests. They will probably offer some benefits to America to make Trump look good domestically in exchange for tremendous foreign policy goals that they will accomplish. I assume one of the major points of contention is weapons transfers to Taiwan. Okay, America has steadily increased the weapons that they're shipping to Taiwan. Okay, this obviously is very threatening for Xi Jinping. Americans present this as like, oh, we're invested, we're committed in defending Taiwan. But obviously, nobody wants missile bases of a foreign adversary, 90 miles off their coastline. Cuba being a great example of this, right? And China wants reunification, peaceful reunification. That's their goal. That's been their goal. And they're committed to that goal, right? America wants to fuck that up to the best of their ability by claiming that this is the demands of the Taiwanese population. So Trump is going in incredibly weak. You have the Iran war. Strait of Hormuz is still closed. You have the tremendous leverage that Xi Jinping has already had, that he demonstrated in the tariff war that took place. Two different types of leverage, one being the manufacturing hub that makes it incredibly difficult to decouple the rest of the world from China. Right? So that's one card that he already had. The other is complementary to the first card, which is the fact that they are a monopoly they're a monopoly procurer for rare earth minerals, right? Rare earth minerals are necessary for all matter of defense. Not only do they make the components, but they also procure the rare earth minerals, which is obviously unbelievably important for American defense manufacturing. Oh, damn. Detroit Metro Times. Top article is the original. Second is the edit. Metro Times. Any explanation? Our intention was not to smear us on. However, we see how the wording in the previous version was better. We appreciate the free feedback and reverted to the original version. Oh, shit. God damn. Big W's today, man. Little W's, big W's. Let's go. Let's freaking go. So, as far as the leverage that China has, China's leverage is not only endless, but it's also apparent. Okay, we saw how this stuff unfolded in the tariff side when Donald Trump tried to engage the world in a ridiculous tariffs war that he wanted to engage China with. The rest of the world was suffering as a consequence of the ridiculous demands that Trump was making on Liberation Day. And China showed that it was a stable partner or reliable partner in international trade in the process, and then basically forced America's hand to back away, right? So this was the first failure. Liberation Day, if Trump was correct, was going to lead to tremendous economic activity on U.S. soil, rebuild a manufacturing base on America, on American soil, fix the trade deficit with all these other countries, while simultaneously pushing countries away from China, right? Pushing countries' reliance away from China to other secondary markets, India potentially, and all these other places, and maybe even in the long term, the United States of America. Now, of course, that was a laughable goal. We don't have centralized planning in the United States of America, and therefore it's virtually impossible for us to build this robust, competitive industrial base on U.S. soil. So, when these are all the factors that you need to consider when thinking about Donald Trump trying to regain some kind of leverage. So China even threatened to implement strategic export controls, specifically on rare earth minerals. This was the nuclear option in trade, right? America wanted to regain some kind of leverage against China, and Donald Trump's initiatives in Venezuela and its initiatives alongside Israel were going to be the moments, the victories that Donald Trump could bring to the Beijing summit. Venezuela was a fast operation. It gave Trump a lot of confidence. He thought he could double down in Iran. Obviously, Iran had hands, and America was incapable of forcing Iran to submit. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The energy markets are crying, and America is in a far weaker position now than it would have been if it went to China with no crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, right? So I suspect, as we have covered before, that China is going to say, we're going to do big investments in America, okay? And unlike many of these other partners, China might actually follow through on those investments. As I said yesterday, this is basically reheating Barack Obama's nachos, but I do suspect that will be the case. China will say, hey, look, we're going to make you look good, okay? We're going to make you look good. We'll give you something to talk about, okay? Even if they don't follow through on the IOUs, even if they don't actually, even if they don't actually end up committing to trillions of dollars in investments to build Chinese factories on U.S. soil and hire American workers like they claim they would, it still doesn't matter because it makes Trump look good in the short term, right? And that's pretty much what the speculation is here. China also obviously is unbelievably competitive in AI. So there's that element of it as well. China has basically kept up. Hassan is the most damaging propagandist in this country for people under the age of 40. Okay. I assume you're an unk then. If you're a chopped unk, what are you doing in here? Jensen Huang is not going? I thought NVIDIA was going. That's interesting. Get over it, bro. I think you're the one who needs to get over it, buddy. Whoa. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang didn't make the cut to join Trump's traveling party for China summit. That's interesting. Jensen Huang, out of all of the major billionaire like industry leaders in this country, is one of the few that has been very outspoken about not only maintaining like decent trade relations with China, obviously, and continuing to trade with China, continuing to use China, or continuing to sell China. Like Apple CEO, former Apple CEO Tim Cook, famously was very positive about continuing to use Chinese manufacturing, right? Elon Musk already has Tesla in China, right? Tesla is huge in China, a lot bigger than you would expect, even though its market share has diminished tremendously as BYD has made significant gains. Tesla, I believe, is also one of the only companies in China, only foreign companies in China that isn't controlled by the Chinese, the Communist Party of China. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong on that. Someone can correct me, but I'm pretty sure it's the only foreign company that doesn't have a majority share investment, and therefore complete control over. BYD isn't the largest in China. Isn't even the largest in China. No, I'm talking about internationally. BYD has swept up a big chunk of the Tesla market share. Yes, I saw. Editor here, I didn't like the repetition of the word anti-Semitism, but that was dumb reason to edit it, and it was not worth changing. Okay, that's nice. That's nice of them. Beef with Detroit Metro Times is over. Okay, we are supporters of the Detroit Metro Times. Thank you for being responsive, Detroit Metro Times. Tesla CEO will be traveling alongside other corporate heavyweights like Apple's Tim Cook, BlackRock's Larry Fink as a part of the U.S. delegation as more than a dozen business leaders from Wall Street to Silicon Valley join the trip. Trump is preparing for a high-profile meeting with President Xi, with economic cooperation and corporate ties expected to take center stage in a rare show of business alignment alongside a presidential visit. The trip could shape the tone of economic relations between the two countries going forward, as U.S. officials say the president wants to discuss the creation of a board of investment and a board of trade with China, as business leaders may prove to be just as much in the spotlight as the bilateral meeting itself. The reason why I'm saying that Jensen Huang is not going, or the reason why I'm saying it's interesting that Jensen Huang is not going, is because unlike many of these other capital owners, you know, industry titans and whatnot, and they're probably going to sell some Boeing planes to China, by the way. That's one of the things that I've heard as well. They're going to try to get China to buy some Boeing planes. I assume the reason why the Meta team is coming is because of the Meta purchase of a Chinese company that was stopped by the Chinese government. They want to continue having fruitful investments back and forth between China and the United States of America, because obviously money talks. All this posturing at the end of the day for national security is bullshit when it comes down to the interests of corporations. And I think the reason why, this is it exactly. NVIDIA is lobbying to soften chip export restrictions, arguing it will lose markets to Chinese competitors. And I think that's the reason why Jensen Huang is not going on this trip. Because Jensen Huang said something very interesting on the podcast of that one guy that I actually listened to, because I'm such a insane person. I'm a chud-ass loser who only listens to podcasts, but I even listen to podcasts on Twitter, okay? And Jensen Huang went on the podcast of this guy. He's like a hot Indian dude who's like a brolic. He got a New York Times puff piece written about him too recently. What's his name? Do you guys know who I'm talking about? Yes, he's a Twitter podcast guy. But he, Dwarkesh. Yes, Dwarkesh. That's the guy I'm talking about. So Jensen Huang went on Dwarkesh's podcast, okay? And on that podcast, he literally argued against Dwarkesh, saying like, why would you want to soften chip export restrictions to China and also give access to China to some of our latest technology? And his argument was actually very interesting. Jensen Huang's argument was, China is going to reach our level, our technological, like our manufacturing capabilities, regardless. And the fact that we are not, we're not a car company was a really good rant. Does anyone have the link? Actually, I want to watch it. I'll just, this will be much better to listen to here. So this was a pretty interesting take that I heard from Jensen Huang. Another interesting take from Jensen Huang was when he was like, I'm a billionaire. I don't give a shit. I'll pay the billionaire tax. Who gives a f-? Everyone needs to stop complaining. But here's what Jensen Huang said.
Chinese companies and Chinese labs and the Chinese government had access to...
Was I wrong, by the way? He is hot. I think saying the hot Indian guy who has a Twitter podcast is a pretty apt description of this dude, okay?
The AI chips to train a model like Claude Mythos with these cyber offensive capabilities and run millions of instances of it with more compute. The question is, is that a threat to American companies, to American national security?
First of all, Mythos was trained on fairly mundane capacity and a fairly mundane amount of it by an extraordinary company. And so the amount of capacity and the type of compute it was trained on is abundantly available in China. And so you just have to first realize that chips exist in China. They manufacture 60% of the world's mainstream chips, maybe more. It's a very large industry for them. They have some of the world's greatest computer scientists, as you know. Most of the AI researchers in all of these AI labs, most of them are Chinese. They have 50% of the world's AI researchers. And so the question is, if you're concerned about them, considering all the assets they already have, they have an abundance of energy. They have plenty of chips. They got most of the AI researchers. If you're worried about them, what is the best way to create a safe world? Well, victimizing them, turning them into an enemy, likely isn't the best answer. They are an adversary. We want the United States to win. But I think having a dialogue and having research dialogue is probably the safest thing to do. This is an area that is glaringly missing because of our current attitude about China as an adversary. It is essential that our AI researchers and their AI researchers are actually talking. It is essential that we try to both agree on what not to use the AI for. With respect to China, we want to have, of course, we want the United States to have as much computing as possible. We're limited by energy, but we got a lot of people working on that, and we had to not make energy a bottleneck for our country. But what we also want is we want to make sure that all the AI developers in the world are developing on the American tech stack and making the contributions, the advancements of AI, especially when it's open source, available to the American ecosystem. And it would be extremely foolish to create two ecosystems, the open source ecosystem, and it only runs on the Chinese a foreign tech stack.
Bro, this is what I mean, by the way, when I say these do not, at the end of the day, these don't care about anything but their bottom line, okay? Like, I don't even think he's wrong necessarily, but he's basically saying, look, man, China's going to get there with or without us. We might as well sell them some shit, okay? That's literally what it is. Billionaires are stateless regardless, but he's straight up saying, look, they have gotten there over and over again. Sure, they sometimes follow us, they trail behind on some of the more sensitive technology, some of the proprietary tech that's like virtually impossible to recreate. Obviously, the machines that make these semiconductors is one example of this. But it's very clear that even if we try to cast China aside, even if we try to force China out of having access to this proprietary tech, they inevitably get there, and they find ways to do it in a much cheaper manner, right? We saw this with DeepSeek, obviously, which was what, like $5 million total or something? It was unbelievable, and it put a dent initially in America's AI dominance. So he's, the Huawei chips aren't even better than NVIDIA. They're just more cost effective in ways that matter. Okay. So he's just saying that, like, we can think that we can stop China's rise in this field, but it's very clear that they're going to get there eventually. Right. So at that point, as a billionaire, my job is to keep making money. So if they're going to get there anyway, we might as well make money along the line, okay? And maybe even have some kind of control over or force some kind of reliance on the Chinese side to make sure that like they still have to operate with our tech rather than make their own competitive tech that will then end up disrupting our market dominance even in the Western world. Because it's true, Jensen Huang knows that there is no way to try and stop China with the current design of international trade. This is precisely the reason why a lot of the European markets constantly complain about electric vehicles. They say that China is not trading, China is actually cheating. Why is China cheating? Because they have a similar system that we do with market subsidies, except their subsidies are far more comprehensive, and their subsidies don't get distributed to the CEOs and the shareholders. Their subsidies are used to engage in overproduction and to make cost-effective and unbelievably affordable market competitors that end up displacing the domestic markets. What I mean by that is, with electric vehicles, for example, China has been able to destroy any kind of initiative that the EU could have had in terms of moving in this new technology, in terms of pioneering this new technology, because it's far too costly to produce an electric vehicle fleet in Europe as opposed to China. China, when it comes to electric vehicles, has completely destroyed any kind of dominance America or the European Union could ever have. Okay? And I say this as someone who's an EV enjoyer of the European variety. That's actually a good take. They basically did the Walmart strat on Europe or the Amazon strat. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're engaging in predatory pricing, right? That's what the claim is. It's impossible for the European manufacturers to compete with the Chinese manufacturers
in a closed ecosystem, and that runs on the American tech stack. I think that would be a horrible outcome for the United States.
I mean, I think the concern, going back to the flop difference in the hacking, is, yes, they have compute, but there's some estimates that because they're at 7 nanometer, they don't have EUV because of chip making export controls. The amount of flops they're able to actually produce, they have like 1/10 the amount of flops that the US has. And so with that, could they train eventually a model like Mythos? Yes. But the question is, because we...
What? You either have to not understand a command economy on a fundamental level, or you just have to assume that they don't have one at all in order to logically conclude that China is cheating law is just pure cope. Yes, they do understand it. These people are not stupid. They totally understand how the Chinese markets work. They totally understand how the Chinese command economy works. After all, these guys are like, they're not dumb. They're just evil, okay? Let's be real. I'm not talking about Elon Musk, but even Elon Musk has probably a pretty profound understanding how the Chinese command economy works, right? The Europeans know. They're just saying that China is cheating because China is beating Europe in its own game. And it's impossible to compete against because Europe is capitalist and China is, at the end of the day, a centrally commanded, planned economy, okay? So as a planned economy, they can muster up the industrial forces to move in the direction of certain sectors to basically displace their market competitors in the international trade design that currently exists. The only way to fight back against that, ironically enough, if you wanted to do that at all, would be to also have a communist single-party state with a command economy. That's it. There is no way to beat the efficiency of a command economy, and everyone knows it. That's why I always reduce the Chinese control over the flows of capital to subsidies, right? Like, I know that it's not the same, but it's basically a supercharged version of the subsidy structure that we have. Subsidies are one way of doing central planning, okay? It's just the European and the American Western capitalist way of doing some kind of central planning. We have it here too, right? Here, you get a shake. That was a good take, by the way. This is a good take shake. Obviously, it's not comparable to subsidies at all. It feels like a lot. We're en route to a planned economy as it is. We already have a planned economy. It's just that we planned the economy at the behest of capital and not at the behest of some kind of national prospect, for example. If you don't want to say China is like actually truly socialist or whatever, they very clearly have 5-year plans that they implement. And those 5-year plans are directed in a way where China has an upper hand in whatever goals that they have in whatever sector that they want to develop. Those sectors can be developed in the interest of advancing some sort of international goal. Those sectors could be developed in advancing the interest of some kind of ecological goal, right? Sometimes those two things work with one another. Obviously, a big part of the reason why China has been unbelievably dominant in the electrification initiatives in the realm of renewables is because they both have an ecological goal, both at the domestic level, where they obviously had a big problem with like smog and a big problem with the coal powered power plants they had, and their over reliance on fossil fuels that was actually genuinely devastating the environment in China. And they fixed it. They damn near fixed it in its entirety as a consequence of their move in the direction of renewables. But they also did that because they understand that there's a finite supply of fossil fuels on this planet, and our over-reliance on fossil fuels is going to be endlessly devastating for climate change and all of the other famines and shortages that come along with that, all the global instability that comes along with that. And on top of that, they recognize that is the next market, right? They're not just banking on future generations. They're also planting their flag in being the monopoly provider of the next stage in our energy transition. The next stage in our energy transition is inevitable, okay? Because fossil fuels, I keep repeating this, are finite. They're not only devastating for the ecology, they're not only devastating for anthropogenic climate change, but they're also going to run out at some point, right? There's also obviously the issues with fossil fuels being a consumable good, and therefore there needs to be constant transiting of, oil tankers. And we're seeing that there are some limitations with that as well, as opposed to when you put a solar panel down, you can't really block out the sun, right? Fossil fuels are infinite. Sure. Yet a command economy is fundamentally anti-democratic. The STP, Soviet-type planning, or even the Chinese model have no modicum of socialist mechanisms because workers have no say in the economic decisions that affect their lives. Not only is it inefficient, it is far removed from socialism as American capitalism is. There are more humane forms we must work towards. Thank you, insincere compliant. When you arrive at the more humane model, you can let me know, okay? You are talking about the most successful and long-standing transitional socialist state. Clearly, whatever kind of utopian communist model that you have in mind has never been implemented, and most likely is, not going to be implemented in the upcoming decade or even the upcoming century. Yes, it looks like a state-owned monopoly capitalist mode of production, but seemingly it's the most successful one in terms of advancing the material conditions of the working class of this country, especially considering that this was unbelievably successful in the USSR as well, in spite of the excesses, in spite of the mismanagement, in terms of changing Russia and the USSR in general from an agrarian peasant society into one that was able to defeat the United States of America in the space race by putting Yuri Gagarin up there before we ever could. And they did that in a very short period of time, and they did that without the benefits, the economic engine of slavery. I obviously am not saying benefit as though slavery is a good thing. I'm saying slavery was beneficial in terms of Western development, right? Slavery is unbelievably cruel. It was an unbelievably cruel practice, and it was formative in the development of Western nation states. So, Russia did that without the colonial exploits, and also by enslaving populations overseas. So yes, there were a lot of excesses, there were a lot of failures, but clearly the results are the results. And the same goes for China. Participatory economics is a clear example. China has made great progress in modernization and improving the material conditions of the workers. Yeah, we're talking about a country that was able to take away we're talking about a country that was able to, through these initiatives, eradicate extreme poverty to the tune of 800 million people. Slavery is probably pretty good for profits when you're so uncreative that you can only raise profits by cutting wages. True. Another good take. USSR was the first socialist nation. Of course, mistakes were made. I think technically USSR might not be the first socialist nation. I forget which nation was the first socialist nation, but regardless, there were a lot of problems. There was also technological limitations as well. No, I'm not considering the French Commune. Josh Gottheimer went on Newsmax to attack me. I did not see that. Also, China is not a command economy. The government offers available credit and capital allocations for local governments, and they offer subsidies and benefits to attract competitors. That's why I said this is just social democracy. Okay. Listen. I think China has a lot of control over the industrial output of China and Chinese companies. Okay. They found an interesting, what is this, man? What are you? Okay. They found a very interesting, dynamic way to engage in a command economy. It's not done at gunpoint. Okay. It's not done at gunpoint. There's no like, if you don't do this, you're going to prison. Okay. It's not like a gulag system or whatever right? It's done through a more efficient way of controlling capital flows. This is what I'm saying. I'm openly the point I'm making is that the Chinese system is not as direct as you would expect it, but it's very clear. It's very clear that they direct the market. There is a market system, but it is ultimately controlled by way of capital flows, and they direct and redirect to specific sectors, to specific industries. Okay? I asked you to look at logs because I don't understand why you think that there should be EU-China alignment. Then you understand that the only way for Europe not to deindustrialize is to raise tariffs matching the subsidies on offer. Also, subsidies are wasteful. You can only hope to subsidize monopolies until they gain scale and vertical integration benefits to catch up. I mean, I think that there is not an EU-China alignment because of the way that the European Union currently works. Okay? I think what I'm saying is, like, if there was a serious EU-China alignment, it would require a radical transformation of the European Union, a radical transformation of how countries understand trade, a radical transformation of how countries understand capitalism, which is virtually impossible regardless. You understand that the only way for Europe to not to deindustrialize is to raise tariffs matching the subsidies on offer. Also, subsidies are wasteful. You can only hope to subsidize monopolies until they gain scale and vertical integration benefits catch up. Because right now, in order for the Chinese economy to work, in order for China to maintain its competitive edge in the global marketplace, it must remain a manufacturer around the globe. Europe is also a manufacturer. It both consumes, but it also produces. Obviously, this puts them at odds with China. Okay? What I'm saying is doing away with these distinctions. Oh, for sure. The EU is dead in the water and has a fundamentally neoliberal constitution and not even a fiscal union. The Soviet Union didn't have slavery, but they had an industrial complex of sending people to develop manufacturing in brutal conditions where workers lived in tents and froze to death. Example, iron and steel factory in Magnitogorsk, where there is literally a memorial to the first tent. Yes, no, I'm saying... I didn't say that the USSR developed in the most ethical standards according to the 21st century. I didn't make that argument at all. If you noticed, I said they did not literally rob human beings from other countries for 400 years to develop in the way that the Western world did. They did not engage in colonial extraction of not only bodies, but also all natural resources while leaving the host nations in a state of dire disrepair. They used their own people, oftentimes under brutal conditions, devastating conditions, deadly conditions. The Western world only gets to present themselves as morally superior to the USSR's collectivization efforts and industrialization efforts because they get to hide the fact that they did that with 400 years of colonial exploitation, the rape of Africa, and chattel slavery. And in comparison to both of these different systems, one would probably, I'm not making a moral argument here. I'm not making like a moral comparison, but you can make that moral comparison on your own. Look at the way that China was able to engage in collectivization and industrialization. Look at the way that the USSR was able to engage in collectivization and industrialization as opposed to all European countries. Okay? You can make that distinction on your own. I'm not here to explain that to you. I'm not here to tell you like which one is more moral. Okay? I'm simply saying that there is a hidden side of how the Western world was developed, and it's purposely hidden. In your textbooks, there's mentions to it, but it's never, but no such comparison is ever made between the USSR and the Western world's development and collectivization or industrialization. Yeah. It's bad if you exploit your own people for progress, but if you exploit other nations' people for your progress, you are a beacon of prosperity and equality like America. Do you see what I mean? A similar lie is told all the time. When people say, oh, widespread famines in the USSR and China led to the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. Now, obviously, the number is exaggerated, but no such consideration is ever given to the fact that we currently exist in a global capitalist system, and yet in the age of abundance, when there is a food surplus in the world, there are still 14 million people that die due to famine and famine-related diseases before we even factor in the number of those who die due to war, before we even factor in the numbers of those who die due to anthropogenic climate change, okay? Because when 14 million people die under famine and famine-related diseases every single year under a global capitalist system, we say, sorry, they didn't bootstrap it hard enough. Then it's down to the individual, okay? They died not because of an inefficiency in global capitalism, okay? They died because they didn't work hard enough. They didn't Sigma grind set their way into. They didn't Sigma grind set their way out of abject poverty, extreme poverty. That's it. That's the difference. And it's understandable, right? We have this bias. We live in these systems. Of course, we're going to be a little bit biased towards the system that we know, the economic organization of society that we've existed under. Oh, it's understandable. Capitalism washes its hands, not unlike Pilate. 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 Every time I hear that, I think of goddamn America. Yeah, I think of Reverend Jeremiah Wright in his famous sermon that got him canceled by Barack Obama. Meanwhile, this is what Barack Obama was doing.
And pussy too.
Yeah. Anyway, we dove into some very, very strange territory here. I never thought that I would be speaking about the USSR and its excesses in the at the behest of collectivization initiatives, but we got there through Jensen Huang's take on why it's more beneficial for NVIDIA to sell their products in China than to abide by some kind of American export control and then watch as China develops competitive chips regardless and then no longer has any reliance whatsoever in NVIDIA chips.
We have more flops. American labs are able to get to these level of capabilities first. And because Anthropic got to it first, they say, okay, we're going to hold on to it for a month while all these American companies, we give them access to it. They're going to patch up all their vulnerabilities. And now we release it. Furthermore, even if they train a model like this, the ability to deploy it at scale, if you had a cyber hacker, it's much more dangerous if they have 1 million of them versus 1,000 of them. So that inference compute really matters a lot. In fact that they have so many AI researchers who are so good is the thing that makes it so scary, because what is it that makes those researchers more productive is compute.
We should always be first, and we should always have more. But in order for that outcome for you to what you described to be true, you have to take it to the extremes. They have to have no compute. And if they have some compute, the question is how much is needed. The amount of compute they have in China is enormous. You're talking about a country. It's the second largest computing market in the world. If they want to aggregate their compute, they got plenty of compute to aggregate.
The hogs are fuming about this. Yeah. We are first place because of compute is such a dumbass take, man. Everything computer. Everybody Tesla. No, sorry. What was it? I love Tesla. Everything computer. Everybody. We love Tesla. Everything computer. Everybody transgender. And now, everything casino. That's the new one. The whole world is casino. Mallory is spreading Adam Wren's schmear of Abdul. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And also, yeah, that came from Liz Smith. What is this? You have no idea of the Soviet Union? It's hard to say, but you would sit in the Soviet gulag with your open opinions. You have no idea of the Soviet Union, says Maze Mazin. As a German living in Australia, it's ridiculous. America's discovering Hitler. Lol, I break down. As a German living in Austria, it's ridiculous. Österreich. Yeah. Austrian anti-communists make me so mad. And you know why. I've already done the rant. You get to sit in affordable housing in Red Vienna due to the tireless work of the communists that came before you. Okay? It's unbelievably hogged up. You literally are one of the few developed countries. You're one of the few developed nations that actually has like a decent level of control over the housing market directly as a consequence of the tireless work of communists that came before you. And you still complain. You're like, oh, you don't know about the Soviets. They are so bad. They are so bad. Yeah, meanwhile, the dudes who were like, we love the Soviets, we wish we could be a part of the Soviets ourselves, are responsible for you sitting in a government controlled, publicly funded housing that is sitting on top of these beautiful building blocks where you get to have a gym in your goddamn publicly owned housing unit that you live in, where your rent is like $300 a month or whatever and you're like, oh, it's getting so expensive here. Meanwhile, travel to any other country and see what it usually looks like, okay? Yeah, affordable housing in Vienna. Yeah, here. We're not going to do this again. I do this too much. I do this too frequently, okay? 65%. 65%. Remember that number. 65% of all available housing inventory, all housing inventory in the city of Vienna, also known as Red Vienna, is government housing. Okay? 65%. And I still hear from people in Austria complain. It's in many ways no different than those who enjoy the weekend, those who enjoy the absence of child labor, which, you know, we're really bringing back here in the United States of America, who then turn around and say labor unions are bad. Yeah, okay, dude. What are you, a boss in a factory? Are you a factory owner? What the do you mean labor unions are bad? You're a worker, dumbass. And you will most likely remain a worker for the rest of your life. So you might as well make sure that you get to reap the benefits of your productive output. And labor unions are only one way, but perhaps one of the most successful, in the short term especially, ways of achieving those results. I had an Austrian anti-communist in a global economic law class, maybe at the LSE, say that the Chinese want a new war because they have an excess population of young males, which causes social instability. They're insane. In front of our lib Warrenite trade law professor. Yeah, people in Europe get so crazy about anti-communism. They actually lose their minds. They get even more rabid than Americans do, because Americans are not very, very well read. Let's say, like we hate communism here in America, but it's almost like a childish hatred. We're like, ooh, spooky. They're weird. We don't understand it. Europeans also understand it. It's like they studied it better so they could be more efficient in their hatred. It's the same principle with European anti-Semitism versus American anti-Semitism, right? Where the European anti-Semitism is infinitely more sophisticated, okay? They've read the textbooks. They know exactly how to be anti-Semitic in a much more intellectual manner, as opposed to the average American's anti-Semitism. I felt so bad, but I had to do. I dislike China, lie, but you are insane. Bro, there were Chinese students in class. Of course, you're talking about an institute of higher learning in the West. Of course, there were Chinese students. I've talked to them when I was in China. That's why they have a pretty deep understanding of the hatred that the West has towards China, more so than like the average Chinese person that's never been to the West, who thinks, oh, it's awesome. I love, I love the fact that Americans are here. Yeah, it's midwit hatred versus dim-witted hatred. We really don't do anti-communism propaganda anymore. We rely on our parents and grandparents freaking out when we bring it up. Yeah. This is the exact issue this video addresses. Attempt number 5, lol. A critique of Western Marxism. Okay, stop. You want me to watch that so bad. It's still here, by the way. I still have it right there. I have that video ready to go. I've had it up. Dude, you guys are driving me down a tangent no matter what I do, huh? No matter what I do, you're like, no, we need it. We need an additional tangent. Monitoring the situation. Do not monitor the situation at all. We do not want you to monitor the situation. You must go on these rabbit holes, okay? You must defend central planned economies right now. Trump heads to China for high-stakes summit. Let's keep going.
The U.S. in an awkward position when it comes to China. So as we mentioned, President Trump leaves today.
Living the dream, by the way. Like you hate to see a different queen thrive, okay? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm not glad that happened to you. It should have happened to me instead, okay? That's how I feel about this. And I'm going to be open about it. I'm going to be honest about it. Because he was talking about how wonderful of a show that the Chinese put on every time the Americans get there. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, F you. You don't even deserve it. You don't even deserve it. You don't deserve the Chinese showmanship. Okay? They're going to roll out the goddamn red carpet. You don't deserve it at all.
For a high-stakes visit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Anna Coren reports China could play a role in helping end the conflict if it gets concessions from the U.S.
As President Trump prepares to depart for Beijing for this year's most consequential bilateral summit, the Iran war will loom large. Trump had postponed the trip back in March, expecting the conflict to be over by the time he met with President Xi. Instead,
nope. Nope. Didn't happen.
It's following him to China.
Hormuz has not been open U.S. really need exit, and this exit is in Beijing, I think.
Chinese analyst Henry Wang says Beijing has leverage over Iran as its largest trading partner. He believes Xi could provide a much-needed off-ramp for Trump, but it's likely to come at a price. Xi wants a reduction in tariffs, removal of export controls on advanced semiconductors, and sanctions lifted. But what he wants most is Taiwan. And that would involve the US changing its position on the self-governed island and reducing its decades of military support.
If Trump changed US policy on Taiwan, what would Xi give in return?
No, I think China can really build up the consensus and actually give U.S. a hand in really getting U.S. out of this mess, this crisis in Iran, and open Hormuz for the whole world. And that is what Trump really badly needed.
It's almost 9 years since Trump was last in China, and a lot has changed. This country of 1.4 billion people has become a manufacturing powerhouse, as we witnessed last week, when we visited a dark factory operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, run by AI and robots. It's a very different landscape, and Trump is no longer holding all the cards.
Well, President Trump will arrive here in Beijing tomorrow before meeting with President Xi on Thursday. Now, the fact that these two leaders are coming together is an achievement in itself. It's an opportunity to reset and stabilise relations after years of turmoil. Matt.
I'll take it from here, Anna. Thank you. President Trump leaves today for Beijing for a high-stakes summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the war with Iran is over.
Again, it should have been me. Sorry. I don't know what came over me. Just think. He's going to have the best food. He's going to have the best food. He's not even going to like it. He's going to be like, why is there no McDonald's? Chinese McDonald's, not good enough by my American standards. It's just annoying. Okay? He's going to sit in a high-speed rail, or I think Xi Jinping has like a special train that they roll out for. It's a high-speed rail that they roll out for like foreign dignitaries and shit. He's going to get in that and be like, oh, I don't want to bring this to America. I will never bring this to America. I hate it. Oh, you know what the best method of travel is? A Ford F-450. Annoying, dude. Freaking annoying. Freaking annoying.
Foreshadowing and perhaps influencing what would have been the major issues at play, trade tensions and China's designs on Taiwan. The president says the ceasefire with Iran is on, quote, life support. The Strait of Hormuz remains essentially closed, and Iran has not conceded to the president's demands for peace. Let's get right to CNN's Elaine.
Just to be closer to Xi Jinping, I'd become president of the United States. I'd run just for that goal.
In a train at the White House. This trip has been on the calendar, actually moved, but for some time, a lot of desires to get things done here. But what does it play now?
Yeah, look, I think initially the White House, John, really wanted this to be a visit about trade and the economy, and also, almost a watershed moment for these two leaders of these superpower economies. But so much of it is being now overshadowed by the war in Iran and also this longstanding dispute over Taiwan. But I do want to get into a little bit about what the White House wants this to be about. We know, of course, that really this bruising tariff fight between the U.S. and China has really dominated much of last year. But President Trump and Chinese Xi Jinping did agree to almost like this fragile truce.
We need BYD. We need BYD. I think BYDs are, they're all right. I want a Yangwang. I want the jumping car, the supercar. The Yangwang, what is it, U9? Oof. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. I want a Huawei phone. Oh, my God. Oh, that'd be so sick. Huawei!
Last fall, and the White House.
Wait, Yangwang and his BYD? Wait, which one is the one that I like? That literally is a BYD? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the Chinese companies. Okay, give me a goddamn break. The Xiaomi SU7, I think that's the one I was thinking of. Which one's the one that just broke the records? Oh, it is the Yangwang. It is BYD. Oh, my God. Yeah, no, I was thinking of the U9. I was thinking of the U9, not the Xiaomi SU7. I was thinking of the U9, bro. It's like Toyota and Lexus. Look at the Gyat. Where are you jumping to? Bro, I need this, okay? Do you want to know why I need this? I need this more than anyone else, okay? If you've ever driven in Los Angeles, California, you know this is an absolute necessity. This is an absolute necessity for all the potholes, okay? For all the potholes in LA, they never fix these goddamn roads, okay? And we have literally the best weather, and there's still unbelievable amounts of potholes. Midlife crisis? Okay, man, chill. Let me close off some of these stupid ass tabs. What do we got here? Are these all good? Oh, God, these are all things I want to talk about. Corporate media on Hassan Piker, Diddy Dan, The Diddler, Bill Maher gushes over how refreshing Donald Trump's honesty is, while reporters John Fetterman respond. I don't care about that. Netanyahu approval ratings, Josh Buttheimer. All right. Okay. All these tabs are still workable tabs that I want to get to.
House wants to keep that relative calm moving forward. Now, we are told that their discussions when they meet face to face is part of it's supposed to be about.
That car just broke the production car speed record, faster than the Bugatti Chiron, 750 horsepower to each wheel. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. This is the car. The BYD Yangwang U9 Extreme reached a maximum speed of 496.22 kilometers per hour on the track in Petersburg, Germany, officially beating the Bugatti Chiron Supersport's record as the world's fastest production car. Almost 500 kilometers, dude. What is that in freedom units? What is that like? Or no, it was the track location is Volkswagen's testing ground in Ehrlezien, not Petersburg, as erroneously stated earlier. 308 miles per hour. What? 308 miles per hour? That's an EV, by the way. So what does that mean? As an electric vehicle, what is it? Like, the battery goes out in 10 minutes? Is that what it is? Because that's Amtrak top speed. Yeah, you have your own high-speed rail, dude. Bro, you know how we got 0 to 60? They're going to start tracking 0 to 200. How many minutes does it take? How many seconds does it take to get to 0 to 100? 200. To be fair, a fuel car also finishes nearly a tank at those speeds in minutes. U.S. intelligence shows Iran retains substantial missile capabilities. Dude, you know what this is, right? By the way, this is literally the CIA begging Trump publicly to get a ceasefire negotiation out there. Okay? The only reason why mainstream media keeps reporting on how good the Iranian predicament is for Iran is literally because his generals have given up. The CIA has given up. The entire intelligence community has basically given up talking to Trump directly. So that's why they're going to the public. This is what it is. This is what's happening. Okay? 30 out of the 33 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz are still operational. They're like, dude, please, what the are you doing? I swear to God, we're like, I'm not going to say it. Never mind. I'm just going to stay quiet. But we are nearing very interesting times in terms of what the CIA could do if they wanted to get creative with it. It seems. I'm not, fomenting this. I'm not advocating for it. I'm simply saying that there's only so much historically that the CIA and our intelligence community has, allowed presidents to, molest the money or make interesting decisions that that they were not on board with. Yeah, to be fair, they've already tried it with what's his face, the Butler guy, and it didn't work. It only made him stronger. It only made me stronger. Did you see Friedman begging NATO to stop Trump? They're losing it. Robert Kagan is going to become a communist if this continues. Okay? Robert Kagan is going to be like, I disavow everything that I've done for my entire career. I actually realized the only way to stop the United States of America is with a coalition of the willing. You are molesting the money too hard, Mr. President. In order to save capitalism, we must end capitalism. I'm Robert Kagan, the godfather of neoconservatism, and I approve of this message. Butler was a hoax, but it was the CIA and he missed is my new favorite theory. Yeah. We're going to talk about Baba Dabby in a second. I watched a video with Larry Wilkerson. He had a very different read on that Kagan article. He said he knows Kagan and that Kagan wrote that article as a challenge saying we have to do a ground invasion to save the embarrassment. Really? I mean, I trust Larry Wilkerson's take. I trust Larry Wilkerson a lot more than I trust Robert Kagan, but I'll still use it. I'll still use the assessment or the takeaway from many people to my advantage because I don't want war. You think Butler, if you think Butler was real, you think ears grow back. Oof. Listen, guys, I'm not, I'm never going to dispute you. Okay. I don't care enough. I am so unbelievably agnostic when it comes to whether or not Butler, Pennsylvania was a real assassination attempt or it was staged or if it was the CIA or if it was Mossad or if it was BlackRock. I don't give a fuck. Believe whatever you want to believe. Okay. It's great. I believe all of the theories. Okay. You could say aliens and I'd be like, probably. I am an equal opportunity